I'm going to be reading a poem about the Great Wall that we visited during our China trip. The building of the Great Wall started around 221 BC under the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang. Many dynasties continued to build the Great Wall until the Ming Dynasty around 1600 AD. By the time people stopped building it, or it can never be defined as finished per se, the Great Wall was over 3,000 miles long. The poem I'm going to read was written in the 700s by Li Bai, one of China's greatest poets. Despite the many positive effects it had for China, including helping to maintain peace for about 2,000 years, to put that into context, the US as we know it is less than 300 years old. There is a serious side to all conflicts, and the Great Wall is no exception. Even with the more grisly images of this poem, its ultimate message is how pointless wars can be, and how peace comes at a great cost. The poem's title is War South of the Great Wall. Delirium, battlefields all dark in delirium. Convulsions of men swarmed like armies of ants. A red wheel in thickened air, the sun hangs above bramble and wheat bloods dye purple. And crows, their beaks clutching warrior guts, struggling at flight, reflooded, earthbound. Those on guard atop the Great Wall yesterday became ghosts in its shadow today. And still, flags rise everywhere, like scattered stars. The slaughter keeps on. War drums throbbing. My husband, my sons, you'll find them all there, out where war drums keep throbbing.
Good morning. So today we'll hear from two of the 14 students who went on the China trip with Miss Kelly and Mr. George Lewis. And the students wrote 2 reflection pages each day on their trip, and they came back with a lot of wisdom. So this morning we'll first hear from Kim Ho, a senior, and she's been in Mandarin for 4 years. And then from Kevin, and Kevin's actually from Beijing. He lives in our dorm here, so he has an interesting perspective looking back. All right. So Kim, come on up.
My name is Kim Ho, and I'm a senior. Hi. Are you Chinese?
Yes.
That's over. This question initiated my immersion with every Chinese person. Sorry. I was continuing to ask this question from bargaining to casual conversations. The truth is, I didn't really want to answer the question. Dodging the question kept me from exposing my 4 years of Mandarin. However, evading the question was evading my own culture. Yes, I am Chinese, but I'm an ABC, an American-born Chinese. I'm a proud American, but a little piece of me wanted to learn about my ancestral culture. This yearning was my motivation to go back to the homeland of China, and practicing my Mandarin skills before it was too late. That was the moment. I want to take you on a journey to China and teach you a little bit about its culture. Let us start with the most popular and local topic, food. For big meals, everyone sits in a circular table where the food is served on a lazy spoon. The food in China was always delicious, and I always had my stomach full. It consisted of rice, broccoli, fish, duck, and assorted vegetables. Before beginning this decadent meal, here are a few guidelines to know about Chinese table etiquette. Number 1, respect your elders. Everyone must wait for the oldest person at the table to eat before anyone else starts. Number 2, don't be selfish. Always serve the people to your right and to your left. Number 3, it is extremely rude to be the last that person who eats the last piece of a dish without any permission. Number 4, everyone must eat a little bit of every dish. And number 5, having no food and no food to go means that the dinner was an utter disaster. Nothing is more Chinese than rules. Despite these rules, the atmosphere at Chinese dining made conversations engaged with people across the tables and where everyone is involved and feels connected. With full stomachs, let's embark on learning about Beijing high school students from our culture exchange. The exchange began with a student giving a speech on the core philosophy of school. It is said that students should be responsible in becoming superior individuals so they can finish school and give back to society. Afterwards, all the students greeted our groups with presents, and even though they had just met us, it is customary that every guest should receive a present even though they don't know them. We are partnered up with our individual translators and shouted them to their classrooms. As I stood in the back of our classroom with my fellow peers and our translator, I observed in the life skills class. The teacher asked the students, "What would you do if you were given $1 million?" I heard one student reply, "I would take that money, invest it so I could make more money." The teacher then showed them the right and practical ways to use imaginary money. Helping parents go to college and pursuing personal interests like practicing piano. After the dismissal, students had free time. And during this free time, we started talking and connecting with the other exchange students about similar interests, mainly American culture, like Vampire Diaries and The Avengers. I remember us fangirling about Chris Hemsworth and all of the Adventure stars. When our group had to leave, we were all sad because it felt like we had lost or had to leave behind our long-lost friends. Even though students are the next generation of Chinese society, the elderly are at the heart of Chinese culture. China appreciates the dedication that elderly people have done for society, and as a sign of their appreciation, they have free access to public transportation. One day, our group was brought to a park where we saw elderly people coming together to socialize with each other and enjoying each other's company. I saw them teaching each other how to do the waltz, how to do belly dancing, and how to be very intense with a game of poker. In one area of the park, there is a whole section dedicated as a public gym, where the elderly can do pull-ups, ride stationary bikes, or stretch. And I was amazed at how much stronger and fitter the elderly people were compared to everyone in our group. And after 10 minutes of exploring this public gym, we were all sitting down, and while everyone was still working out. After immersing myself in China, I acknowledged the family-oriented culture that centers on helping collective rather than individual. Coincidentally, our Prairie China trips group started as a group of freshmen, sophomores, and seniors, but gradually we began to bond more and more as they progressed. And at the end of the trip, we became a Prairie China Trip 2013 family. I was able to appreciate my trip and gain cultural knowledge because I was open-minded to new experiences. The vulnerability of being without any distractions gave me the advantage to step out of my own world and see it through new eyes. I was able to immerse myself in the Chinese culture and appreciate every little moment. I started to talk with people and learn new things about them that I would never known if I just took the time. And I also started to reflect upon myself. This type of experience is not limited to traveling to one's culture or traveling in general. Taking the time to step out of your own world can open new doors and new experiences. This can simply be done through meditating, walking, or the hardest of all, not having your cell phone on when you're talking with a friend or anyone else. Like Tyler says, technology is an addiction. But doing this could help you appreciate where you come from, where you're at, and who you are. And the most important lesson of this China trip was my 10 beautiful days with Mr. Gillis.
Before the trip, lots of people ask me why am I on China trip, since I've lived in China for 15 years. Well, to be honest, one of the reasons is my ignorance toward my own city. For I've never been to Forbidden City, even if it's only a mile away from my house. However, the real motivation of going on China trip is to feel China in a different perspective. Not as a homie, but as a visitor. One of my highlights of this trip is a local school visiting, where I truly realized how big the differences are between Chinese and American education, and what studying at Priory had brought to me. The environment of the school is similar to my middle school, and most of the schools in China, with tracks, basketball field, ping pong table, that's why we're so good at ping pong, yes, and 5 floor buildings. The students all have uniforms, generally more restrictive in this perspective, however interesting that the uniform has sweatpants, which is in fact not allowed in our dress code. When students met a teacher, including Miss Kelly, they bowed to the teacher. And there's even some middle schooler bowing to Connor, Margot, and I. But to this point, everything was on surface. It was not until when we visit a class that I realized the big difference in the mindset. Connor, Margot, and I went to a class called Brain Training, which I actually felt to be really interesting and rare class. During that period, the teacher introduced students to planning lifetime goals, similar to what sophomores did in Cal's class. During the class, I became very excited and was eager to speak. This was not only different from myself 2 or 3 years ago, but also different from students in China in general. The interaction between students and teachers were rare, and students, unless motivated by the teacher, wouldn't speak out what's inside their mind. I saw both of my old self in them. I saw part of my old self in them. And suddenly, all my changes became so clear. In my mind, what used to be following all the things said by teachers shifted to actively thinking while listening to form ideas and form questions. This new mindset was set up by the active, free, and applicatory classes at Priory. In one of my discussions with my father during the summer, I mentioned how going through Mr. Cohen's badge system was very painful. It helped me to go out and do different things and be willing to embrace new ideas and new environments. His class was one of the many examples of how studying here at Priory helped me to be more explorative and creative. And that's what I did at the local high school that afternoon. I made my own lifetime goals, which emphasized on taking risks and exploring new areas. Then I showed it to the teacher and showed it to the whole class. This is my own interpretation on how a person should be creative, explorative, and believe in their own choices. Here at Priory, creativity ignites our daily life. But I believe that we still can together learn more about the spirit of adventure and exploration. Having the ability to do so, we should embrace new ideas and new experiences. We can try out things we never thought about. New classes, new sports, and for me, maybe a trip to China that seems to be nonsense at first. I've watched lots of Heineken ads. Not like I drink Heineken, because that would be inappropriate. But because their slogan really resonated with me. And it summarizes my point. Open your world. After my presentation at the high school that afternoon, the teacher, being surprisingly open, said, "Look, this is the difference.